A wooden hammer strikes a pitch-covered beam, the sound ringing out flat across a dry, mocking valley. The air is heavy with dust. They think it is a poetic way of describing anyone who tries to be a good person, anyone who prays, or maybe just humanity in general. When the Hebrew prophets stop writing, a heavy silence falls over the desert for 400 years. But the world does not stand still. The map is rewritten in blood and bronze. Alexander the Great sweeps across the ancient Near East, his phalanxes kicking up dust from Macedonia to the borders of India. And with the armies comes a new language. Greek becomes the air the empire breathes. The ancient Hebrew scrolls are unrolled on wooden tables in Alexandria, and Jewish scholars scrape fresh ink onto parchment, translating the sacred texts into the language of their conquerors. This translation, known as the Septuagint, has to figure out what to do with the Bene Elohim. They need a Greek equivalent for the Cosmic Council. They choose the phrase huioi theou. Huioi is the plural of huios, son. But in the Greek-speaking world of the first century, this was a highly dangerous phrase. If you walked the marble streets of Rome or Ephesus, the title Son of God was already taken. It belonged to the emperor. Caesar Augustus had minted silver coins declaring himself Divi Filius, the son of the divine. Towering marble statues of the emperors demanded the burning of incense and absolute political loyalty. To the Greco-Roman mind, a huios theou was a military conqueror who brought peace through overwhelming violence. But the Jewish writers knew the deeper history, and in modern Christian culture, it does carry that warm, domestic weight. But if you look closer at the ancient Hebrew beneath the English, they knew the title did not belong to a politician in Rome. They knew it belonged to the celestial beings who had rebelled against Yahweh. The Huai, Theo, were the rogue administration currently holding the nations hostage, the very entities pulling the spiritual strings behind Caesar's throne. The word huios in Greek carries a specific legal weight. It does not just mean a biological child. The Greek word teknon is used for that. Huios refers to a mature, recognized heir. It describes a son who has been formally granted the authority to act on his father's behalf. A son entrusted to manage the estate and carry the family signet ring. The rebel gods had lost that right in Psalm 82. The inheritance was sitting vacant. The administration of the cosmos was waiting for a legitimate heir. That changes everything about how you read the opening pages of the New Testament. The Gospel writers are not borrowing Roman propaganda. They are not inventing a new religious metaphor. They are picking up the most contested, terrifying cosmic title in the universe and preparing to reassign it. The title is not a participation trophy. It is the deed to the nations. And to claim it, someone has to step into the exact territory where the rebel gods have ruled for thousands of years. Someone has to walk into the silence of the desert, at the cosmic rebellion hiding in plain sight. At the exact moments this phrase is deployed across the text, you start to see something. A man walks alone into a wasteland of cracked limestone. The sun beats down on his shoulders. He has not eaten in 40 days. His lips are split and bleeding. The wind howls through the deep ravines of the Judean desert, carrying the smell of baked dust. The physical world is breaking his body down. And then the accuser arrives. He is the same entity from the heavenly courtroom in Job. He is the same dark presence roaming the earth. But he does not bring a scroll this time. He brings a taunt. He looks at the starving man in the dirt and speaks the exact phrase that has haunted the cosmos for millennia. If you are the Son of God, tell this stone to become bread. Read that challenge carefully. The accuser knows exactly what the title means. He knows about the rebel gods of Genesis 6. He knows about the empty thrones in Psalm 82. He knows the celestial administration is waiting for a legitimate heir. This is not a test of human hunger. It is a cosmic interrogation. The accuser pivots. He takes the man up and shows him all the kingdoms of the world in a single, terrifying flash of time. Rome, Parthia, Alexandria. A sudden vision of golden temples, stone altars, and marching legions. Then the accuser makes a chilling claim. The metaphorical reading completely misses. The title Son of God is not a poetic label. It is a stolen cosmic inheritance. He says, "I will give you all their authority and splendor. It has been given to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to." He is not lying. Deuteronomy 32 is still in effect. The rebel Bene Elohim were given the nations. The dark powers hold the borders. The accuser is offering a peaceful transfer of power. He is offering the stolen property back without a fight. Just one act of worship. Just bow down in the dust. Join the rebellion, and you can have the world. But the man in the desert does not flinch. He refuses the bread. He refuses the spectacle. He refuses the shortcut. He proves he will not rule like the Watchers. He will not rule like Caesar. He will not exploit the physical world for his own comfort. He binds the accuser with the ancient words of Moses. He proves he is the legitimate heir. He takes the cosmic title back. The true Son of God has entered enemy territory, and the rogue gods are officially on notice. The invasion of the earth has begun. The title of supreme authority has finally been reclaimed by the true king. But what he does with it next shatters the cosmic order completely. You expect the king who just conquered the desert to build an army. You expect him to hand out swords, but he sits down on a grassy hillside. The real question of this phrase isn't, "Are we all God's children?" It's this: who had to be stripped of the title so you could receive it? The wind blows cool moisture off the Sea of Galilee. He looks out at a crowd of tired fishermen, tax collectors, and peasants, whose hands are thick with calluses from working occupied land. And he hands the most dangerous title in the universe to the most unlikely people on earth. Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." You have probably read that verse on a greeting card or a coffee mug. You have been taught that it means you should avoid arguments and try to get along with your neighbors. But put this verse back into its ancient, cosmic context. Put it next to the giants of Genesis 6, the empty thrones of Psalm 82, and the Roman legions currently marching through Jerusalem. Jesus is not handing out a moral participation trophy. He is announcing a change in cosmic management. When you choose to step into a fractured relationship and create shalom, you are doing something terrifying to the unseen spiritual realm. When you refuse to participate in the rage that powers our political systems, when you lower your clenched fists, when you absorb the sharp sting of a betrayal without retaliating, you are not just being a nice person, you are healing the exact fractures the rebel gods created. If you grew up in church, you have probably been told that being a child of God is just a warm metaphor for how much God loves you. We are a species haunted by the need to belong. We spend our entire lives trying to prove we are connected to a family name. You assume it means you are safe. You assume it means you are forgiven. But the title is not a religious metaphor. It is a cosmic reassignment. God is looking at the vacant thrones of his heavenly council, the seats emptied by the rebel Bene Elohim, and he is pointing to the fishermen on the hill. He is pointing to you. He is saying that the humans who learn to govern the world with self-sacrificial love are the ones who will ultimately inherit the administration of the cosmos. You are not just a saved human being. You are the replacement for the rebel gods. This is the staggering weight of your identity. Your daily decisions to forgive, to serve, to refuse the anxiety of the culture around you. These are not just good habits. They are your training for the celestial council. You are learning the family business. But Jesus did not just speak this title over a crowd and leave it as an abstract promise. A few decades later, a man chained to a Roman guard would write a letter explaining exactly how the legal paperwork for this cosmic transfer was actually signed. The letter arrives in the capital. The wax seal is broken. A parchment scroll is unrolled in the dim light of a house church, deep in the shadow of Caesar's palace. Paul is writing to believers living in the epicenter of human power, and he drops a legal bomb into the text, to a tribe, to a legacy that outlasts our breathing. You carry that orphan anxiety in your chest right now, woven into the way you work. Romans chapter 8, verse 14. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. Huiotiao, the stolen title. But Paul pairs it with a specific Roman legal word, huiothesia, adoption. In the first century Roman world, you did not adopt an infant. You adopted a fully grown adult. Emperors adopted successful generals. Wealthy senators adopted capable merchants. You adopted an heir to manage your estate. You adopted a son to carry your authority into the world. The Roman legal ritual was fiercely physical. It required a bronze scale. It required a heavy piece of copper. It required witnesses in the public square. The moment the copper struck, the bronze scale, the reality shifted. All previous debts were instantly canceled. The old family name was completely erased. The adopted son received a heavy gold signet ring. He carried the weight of the father's voice. Paul looks at a room full of Roman slaves, displaced refugees, and exhausted laborers. He tells them the Spirit has triggered a huiothesia. Adoption is not a sentimental metaphor for belonging. It is a legal transfer of cosmic authority. The true Son of God won the title in the desert. He secured the paperwork on a wooden cross. He verified the signature by leaving an empty tomb with folded grave clothes. And now, he is sharing the inheritance. The way you argue. The way you try to secure your own future. We are all waiting for a judge. A father. A king to hand. He is pulling humanity up into the empty seats of the divine council. Look at the terrifying scope of Romans chapter 8. Look at what the physical world is doing. Paul says, the earth is subjected to futility. The soil is cursed. The forests decay. The oceans are violent. Creation is groaning like a woman in the bloody sweat of labor. What is the earth waiting for? It is not waiting for a massive evacuation. It is not waiting for humanity to simply disappear into the clouds. Paul says creation waits, with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. The dirt remembers the Bene Elohim. The mountains remember the violent giants of Genesis. The nations remember the corrupt gods of Psalm 82. The physical world knows the administration is broken. The universe knows the cosmic thrones are sitting empty. Creation is groaning for the legitimate heirs to finally stand up and take their seats. The title has been secured. The legal paperwork is signed, but the final coronation is still coming. The divine administration betrayed their post, and the floodwaters covered their physical corruption. The morning stars sang over the foundation of the earth, and humanity arrived late to a celestial family. The nations were handed over to rogue kings, and the ancient borders became spiritual war zones. The divine council was summoned for judgment, and the rebel gods were stripped of their immortality. Us, an identity that the world cannot revoke. But to feel the sheer weight of the identity Jesus offers on a hillside in Matthew, a starving king refused to bow in the Judean dirt, and the accuser lost his grip on the empires of the world. He sat on a grassy hillside by the water and handed the most dangerous title in the universe to tired fishermen. The Spirit struck the bronze scale of Roman law, and the empty thrones of heaven were finally filled with human heirs. Same title, same cosmic war, one staggering inheritance. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the groaning, the dirt and the trees waiting for us to finally step into our place. Because the soil remembers the violence of the giants, and the mountains remember the cruelty of the gods of Canaan. Creation is not waiting for a massive evacuation where we all escape, the physical world. It is waiting for the legitimate heirs to grow up and take their seats. If you are in a season where your faith feels incredibly small, where you feel like you are just trying to survive your job, your anxiety, or the fractures in your own family, you are missing the sheer scale of what is actually happening to you. You are not just a saved human being holding on until you get to heaven. Every time you choose peace over retaliation, you have to understand the terrifying creatures who held it first. You have to go back to the days before the flood. Every time you refuse the chaos and the rage of the empire around you, you are in training. You are stepping into a cosmic vacuum. You are learning how to govern, and may the God who fired the rebel gods and tore up the celestial hierarchy grant you the courage to wear his name and the patience to let his Spirit forge you into an heir who is finally ready to rule. If this opens something up in you, subscribe And leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who needs a much bigger vision of what they were actually saved for. And pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. It smells like boiling sap and approaching thunder. A man named Noah is building an ark in a world that has never seen a flood. Water rose. The place to start is the darkest chapter in the entire book of Genesis. The darkest story in the biblical library begins with a border crossing. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Humanity is multiplying on the earth, expanding across the dust of early civilization. And the text records a strange, chilling event. It says that the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they took them as wives. What follows is an explosion of violence, the birth of giants, a corruption so deep and heavy that it brings on the floodwaters. For centuries, modern readers have tried to sanitize this moment. We try to read it as a simple morality tale about the righteous descendants of Seth making bad marriage choices with the wicked descendants of Cain. But that reading ignores the ink on the ancient scroll. The phrase translated sons of God here is the Hebrew B'nai Elohim. Elohim is the word for God. But in the ancient Israelite worldview, it is also a category term. It describes any resident of the unseen spiritual realm. B'nai means sons, derived from the root bana, which means to build or to establish a household. These were not just religious men. They were members of the divine council. They were celestial beings tasked with overseeing the order of creation, who looked down at the physical world, surrounded by a civilization that has spiraled into complete, suffocating violence. But the detail that matters most in this story is not the wood, and decided to take it for themselves. The B'nai Elohim in Genesis 6 are not faithful men making bad human choices. They are divine rebels staging a cosmic coup. This changes everything about how you read the ancient world. They shattered the boundary between heaven and earth, mixing the spiritual and the physical to create a bloodline of tyrants, filling the air with the stench of violence and oppression. They traded their celestial inheritance for earthly pleasure. They were supposed to be God's administration. Instead, they became Earth's monsters. We want the Bible to be a simple, two-dimensional story about good people and bad people. But the Hebrew text refuses to give us that comfort. It insists that human history is entangled in a much larger, much darker spiritual war. The floodwaters wiped out the physical corruption they left behind. But the flood did not wipe the B'nai Elohim out of the story, because the next time this exact phrase appears in the text, these beings are not walking in the dirt of human cities. They are standing in the blinding light of the celestial throne room, answering a summons from the king they betrayed. Picture the scene in the oldest book we possess. A gathering takes place beyond the edge of the visible sky. The floor is like burning glass. It is the reason the wood had to be cut. You find this strange phrase right at the tipping point of human destruction. The air crackles with a terrifying, unapproachable light. The B'nai Elohim step forward out of the shadows. They gather. They stand. They wait. Job chapter 1 pulls back the curtain on the unseen realm, and the language is unmistakable. The sons of God come to present themselves before Yahweh. Among them walks a figure carrying the dry dust of the earth on his sandals, the accuser, arriving from his patrol. The heavenly court is not a metaphor. It is the bureaucratic engine of the cosmos. They are answering to the throne. They are the celestial administration. And while the accuser negotiates the destruction of a man's life, the sons of God stand in the periphery, watching silently. Job loses his children. He loses his wealth. He loses his reputation. He scrapes his bleeding skin with broken pottery in the ash heap of a ruined life. He screams at the silent sky. For 37 chapters, he demands an audience with the court. He demands to know how the universe is governed, and why the administration of the world is so seemingly cruel. Then the storm breaks. A whirlwind tears through the desert. The voice of God answers from the twisting wind. God does not hand Job an explanation. God hands him a memory. He pulls Job all the way back to the foundation of the physical world. He asks him where he was when the Earth's dimensions were measured. In the opening pages of Genesis, you see it again in the prologue of the oldest poem in the biblical library, where he was when the cornerstone of reality was dropped into the dark, and then God reveals exactly who the sons of God really are. Job Harmonsnults. Verse 7. God says, He laid the foundation of the earth, while the morning stars sang together. And all the Bene Elohim shouted for joy. Stars sing, beings shout. A world is born. The oceans are poured. The mountains are carved. The sky is stretched out like a tent, and the sons of God watch it all happen. Before humanity takes a single breath, the sons of God are already there. They are the original family. They are the firstborn of creation. They stood in the celestial gallery and cheered as the physical world came to life. We read the Bible assuming we are the center of the story. We assume the phrase, sons of God, was invented for us. But the text shatters that illusion. We are the latecomers to the family of God. The title is not a human achievement. It is a celestial birthright. But if the Bene Elohim were there at the beginning, singing with joy over a perfect world, if they were the original members of the divine household, something broke. Because the next time Moses mentions these beings, they are no longer singing. They are dividing up the human race, hoarding the nations for themselves, and demanding to be worshipped, as celestial beings gather on a floor of polished stone before a terrifying throne. You see it in the song Moses sings right before he dies. The most controversial explanation for human suffering is buried at the end of a song. Deuteronomy 32 is Moses' final address to a wandering nation before he dies. He is trying to explain why the world is so violently fractured, why humanity is divided into warring factions, and why the landscape is littered with altars to other gods. And to explain it, he points his audience back to the mud bricks and the baking sun of the Tower of Babel. For centuries, our English Bibles said that when God divided the nations at Babel, He set their borders according to the number of the sons of Israel. But there was a glaring historical problem with that translation. Israel did not exist yet. Abraham had not even been born. When modern archaeologists pulled the dry, cracking parchment of the Dead Sea, scrolls out of the desert caves in the 20th century, they found an older, clearer manuscript. The text did not say sons of Israel. It said that the Most High divided the nations according to the number of the Bene Elohim, the sons of God. Babel is not just a story about ancient architecture. It is a story about cosmic divorce. When humanity decided they no longer wanted Yahweh to rule over them, He gave them exactly what they asked for, describing how the ancient borders of the nations were drawn in the dirt. You hear it echoing off the red rock cliffs of a Judean desert. He stepped back. He divided the human race and placed the nations under the authority of His celestial administration, the Bene Elohim. He assigned the lesser spiritual beings to govern the nations, while He kept the future descendants of Abraham as His own personal portion. But the administration rebelled. The sons of God took the worship for themselves. They became the gods of Egypt, the gods of Babylon, the gods of Canaan. They demanded the stench of burning incense and the blood of human sacrifice. They turned the political borders of the earth into spiritual war zones. The ancient Israelites did not think the gods of their neighbors were simply fake statues made of wood and stone. They knew the statues were just physical placeholders for real, terrifying spiritual entities. They knew the Bene Elohim were actively plotting to destroy the one nation that still belonged to Yahweh. This invisible war raged in the background of every famine, every invasion, and every royal decree. If something about this ancient cosmic framework is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So humanity is handed over to the rebel administration. This changes how you read every conflict in the Old Testament. The battles are never just flesh and blood, hurled as a taunt at a starving man whose feet are bleeding. You hear it spoken from a grassy hillside, promised as a reward to peacemakers. When Israel walks out of Egypt, Yahweh is not just defeating a human pharaoh. He is executing judgment on the gods of Egypt, the rogue B'nai Elohim. The entire Old Testament is a massive, ongoing campaign to reclaim the nations from the corrupt sons of God. They stole the worship of humanity. They ruled with injustice and cruelty. But their reign was never meant to be permanent, because God eventually summons the rogue administration to another meeting. A staff strikes a pavement of sapphire. The sound cracks like thunder across the celestial floor. Yahweh steps into the center of the divine council. He stands among the Elohim. He stares down the rebel administration. The rogue B'nai Elohim are summoned from the nations. They are pulled from the high places of Babylon. They are dragged from the bloody altars of Canaan. They are forced to stand before the throne they abandoned. Psalm 82 is an active, cosmic courtroom. The indictment is read aloud. They have judged unjustly. They have shown partiality to the wicked. They have ignored the cries of the starving. They have let the oppressed bleed out in the dirt. They took the worship for themselves. They drank the smoke of the sacrifices. They built empires of iron and slavery. They convinced humanity that they were the ultimate power. And now, they stand exposed. Yahweh demands justice for the weak. He demands protection for the fatherless. He demands rescue for the afflicted. Same phrase, same strange resonance. Most people read the phrase sons of God and assume it is just a nice religious metaphor. The rebel B'nai Elohim did none of this. Instead, they fed on the chaos. The foundations of the earth are shaking. The darkness is swallowing the light. The gods of the nations have failed. Psalm 82 is not a poem about corrupt human politicians. It is a death sentence for the divine administration. The verdict drops. I said, "You are gods. You are all sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals. You will fall like every other ruler. The title is revoked. The immortality is canceled. The celestial inheritance is torn from their hands. They were created to be the family of God. They chose to be tyrants. So they will die like the humans they crushed." But this verdict creates a massive, cosmic vacuum. The nations are still enslaved. The spiritual borders are still guarded by hostile entities. The human race is still stumbling in the dark. And the original family of God has been shattered. Yahweh has fired his administration. He has declared war on the gods of the earth. He is going to reclaim the nations. He is going to rebuild his family. But the detail that changes the rest of the biblical story is how he plans to replace them. It takes centuries of silence, the rise and fall of empires, and a shift in the ancient language itself before the title is finally handed to someone else.